Now you see me. Now you don't. So what's going on, guys? Here we are, finally making the video I've been talking about for so long now. This is going to be an in-depth analysis of my album, Eons. So before we get too deep into talking about the album itself, I wanted to kind of go over a few things that go into what it takes to make an album in the first place. When making a record, generally the first thing you're going to want to do is come up with a concept for the whole project. After you've got your concept down, the next thing you're going to find yourself doing is a whole lot of songwriting. So basically the point of all the songwriting is to try to find some continuity throughout your material so that the whole project is cohesive. The next step after getting everything cohesive is to basically bring the songs to life. This is done through what's called production. This involves recording the songs, mixing, and mastering them. And we're going to kind of talk about mixing and all that kind of stuff later in the video. So once you've gotten all that stuff done, the last thing you're going to want to focus on is the presentation of your product. This is going over the art direction you want for everything, all the way up to planning out maybe some sort of album release party where you get everybody together and maybe you do a show with your stuff. Basically how people are going to perceive or receive your product. So that's basically your initial steps to getting the record together. Now I want to kind of get into what it means to track a record, so you can kind of understand some of the verbiage I'm going to be talking about as we get deeper into the video. So tracking a record is basically the process of recording all the individual instruments and basically piecing the song together. There's a couple different methods that I use to track my record in particular. The biggest method I used was something called direct input, which is basically where you take the signal directly from the guitar, the sound that the guitar is making, and then that's going directly into the source in which you're recording it. There was a separate method that I used in which involved taking a microphone and recording my acoustic guitar at a distance and catching the ambient sound with the microphone. But the most of my recording was all done through digital direct input. So after you've captured the sounds that you want to use, the next thing you're going to move on to is something called mixing. This is basically a long and arduous process of basically losing frequencies that you don't want to use in the recording and leveling out the volume of them as well. This is probably the most hated part in recording for myself. It's basically akin to editing videos, if you know anything about that. Editing anything in general is not fun. Now, a big proponent in how your record's going to end up sounding at the end of everything is the equipment that you're using to record it in the first place. For me in particular, this record was not recorded with anything near expensive. A lot of this stuff was budget equipment at best. I'm going to be showing some pictures here. What I'm going to show you is the laptop that I used to record this. It was a Toshiba laptop. This is a sub $350 laptop. Just for reference, it has a 1.6 gigahertz dual core processing power system with 3 gigabytes of RAM. You don't really need to know what that means, but for reference, just understand that the minimum recommended specs to record with are 2.2 gigahertz with a quad core processor and 4 gigabytes of RAM. So I only have 1.6 gigahertz with a dual core and then 3 gigabytes as opposed to 4. And they were recommending 2.2 gigahertz with a quad core processor. So now I'm going to kind of talk about some of the gear that I used with that laptop in particular. The microphone that I ended up using was a Shure microphone, which is S-H-U-R-E. It was an SM58 model. It's about $100. It's probably the best budget microphone that you can get on the market. Now the recording software I ended up mixing everything in. This was a program called Mixcraft. The version that I used was Mixcraft 5, which is incredibly old. The version that they're on now is Mixcraft 9 for reference. And I've had Mixcraft 5 forever, and the only reason why I ended up using that was basically to put an end to that chapter of my life of using that program, because I've used it for so much over the course of doing everything musical since I basically discovered it. The only instrumentation on the record that is not officially me playing it live is the drum tracks, if you couldn't figure that out already. It's a drum machine program which is accompanied by the Mixcraft program. It's a separate software called Beatcraft. This is something that is still available for purchase today, and it's pretty good for basic stuff and basically served its purpose for what I needed it for. I mentioned before that all of my guitar work, except for the acoustic guitars that I used on one song, all of the guitar work was direct input recorded. The program that I used for the direct input was a program called Guitar Rig 5. This basically, it's got any and every type of amplifier model, and you can dial in all the sounds that you want, all the effects. It's pretty much the end-all be-all for me personally when it comes to recording guitars directly into something. So for acoustic guitars, I ended up using this Ibanez acoustic guitar. This is my favorite and my go-to acoustic guitar. It's a Talisman model. I would definitely recommend this if you ever see one of these out there. It's an electric acoustic as well, so you can plug it in, do your open mic nights or whatever you got to do with it. But this is a fantastic acoustic guitar. Now for electric guitars, I ended up using 3 different ones. 2 of them were the same model, just made at different times, and the last one was a newer model guitar, but it's more of a budget guitar. But the caveat for that is it's also a limited edition guitar, so I wanted to purchase it, which is why I have it, because it's limited edition. But because it's kind of a cheaper made guitar, it kind of has a thinner sound, and it really lent itself really well to recording specific sections on the record. But for the 2 guitars that are the same model, they are Epiphone Les Paul 100 models. This did used to have a pickguard on it. I took it off just to kind of distinguish it from its sister model, as I call it. This guitar's name is Michelle. I purchased this, I don't even know, maybe about 8 years ago, 7-8 years ago. The reason why I purchased this guitar in particular was to be able to start learning proper Guns N' Roses songs, and you can't really play like Slash if you're not playing a Les Paul. And I was just going to go ahead and show you the other guitar. This is the other Les Paul 100. It's the exact same model. This one has the pickguard on it. It's just obviously tobacco finish. Tobacco sunburst, that is. This guitar's name is Roxanne. This was purchased maybe about 4 or 5 years ago. I wanted it because I saw it at Guitar Center, and it was the only used Les Paul 100 I've ever seen. And I wanted, this is the only other color that I've seen them come in, but they apparently come in a black color as well, all black. So this is the last electric guitar that I used on the record, the one that I was talking about that was special, limited edition. This is a Les Paul Special 2 made by Epiphone. This is a signature Slash model. So this is modeled after Slash's Appetite for Destruction guitar. Basically the guitar that he's had for many years, and the one that he ended up tracking that record with. You can see maybe on the headstock, I don't know if it's going to come through, but it's got his logo on there and whatnot. It's very thin, it's just a flat piece of wood essentially, but it looks very pretty in person. It's got something called a flame maple top on it, and the pickups sound really good actually for what they are, but again, because the body is so thin, it produces a very thin-ish kind of sound, but it can get crunchy if it wants to. But again, it had a very distinct sound that I wanted to use on a specific song on the record. But yeah, so that's the Les Paul Special 2, the Appetite for Destruction model. And the last type of guitar I used on the record was a bass, of course. This electric bass, I bought this off of Craigslist a long time ago. I don't think it was originally this color. I think the person painted it and did a horrible job, but that's not the point. The point of it is it's a bass, and it makes bass sounds. It's nothing special. They scratched off all the information on the headstock, so I really didn't know for the longest time what kind of bass this was, but I'm fairly certain that it's a Squire jazz bass. Just by looking at it, you can kind of make that out if you know anything about guitars. But yeah, just a bass, does bass stuff. Alright, so now that all that's out of the way, let's go ahead and break down the album. So the whole album started back in June of 2018, the conception anyway. It started off with me wanting to write a song that utilized me just tapping on the guitar, which is basically what I'm doing in the intro to the song Time Traveler, which starts off the record. I wanted to see if I could write a whole song without ever actually playing it with a pick, but just with the tapping thing. And of course that's a very absurd idea, but what came out of that idea was, like I said, the whole intro to Time Traveler. And I knew that it was definitely something. And what it would turn into, you know, I did not know, but it was definitely, it seemed like it was something special, so I just kind of kept developing that. And once I had that whole song outlined in sort of a demo, I kind of started to get into the thought process, like, well, you know, what if I keep going with this? You know, what can actually come out of this whole process? So I already had a couple songs kind of in the bank, if you will, because I was already working on something separate with a friend of mine that we were trying to put a band together, but that just wasn't kind of panning out. But I did have these songs that I was already working on, and once I had completed Time Traveler, I was like, well, you know, if I just drag those songs over, rework them a little bit, maybe we have something here. So by this point I had a collection of 4 songs. Those songs would end up being Hyperdrive, Roses, Domination, and of course Time Traveler. Hyperdrive and Roses is probably my favorite song off the record, by the way. Those 2 songs were written back in January of 2018, and then Domination would have been written in February, or a version of these songs were written back then. They were totally, well, except for Roses. Roses was almost the same since its inception. I just kind of cleaned it up a bit. But Hyperdrive and Domination changed quite a bit from their original versions, just to kind of fit more of everything else and make it more cohesive, if you will. And then from there, we end up going on to writing Garden of Eden, which is the softer song on the record. And then after that, we had Stoned Age, which was written in August. Garden was written in June of 2018, and then Stoned Age was written in August of 2018. So those 6 songs, half the record if you will, was all written in 2018. Now for some reason, I would not write anything else for the remainder of 2018. I can't really recall what was going on. I don't know if I got stumped or whatever the case was. Maybe just life was happening. But after Stoned Age, I didn't write anything else for 2018. So then comes January of 2019, and I guess it was time for me to get back on the ball, because that's where we picked things back up, and I ended up writing Dusk Till Dawn. The next song after that would have been Revelations. That was also written in January. So I guess I was on the ball big time. I wrote 2 songs in January for that year. And then we wrote Beyond Infinity in February of 2019, Requiem in September, and then after those 10 songs, I honestly thought I was done with the record for a while, and I kind of sat with it, but then it just seemed like I needed something else, so I ended up writing an extra song, which would have been in November, and that was Space Jam. So Space Jam was the last song to be written for the album. Now keep in mind, again, I said before that there's a lot of songwriting involved when you're making a record, and I definitely wrote more than 11 songs. It's just through sifting through all the material I had to find the cohesiveness, these were the 11 that stood out. So albeit I said that I didn't write anything more for the record after 2018, that doesn't necessarily mean that I didn't attempt to write things. It's just none of that stuff was sticking. So after we wrote Space Jam, which was the last song again that I wrote for the record, it was definitely time to start tracking this thing. I had spent, you know, a year and a half writing all the songs. I was done with that whole process, and I was definitely ready to just start getting this thing solidified and getting everything sounding the way it was supposed to sound. So we kicked off official album recording in November of 2019, and I wouldn't end up wrapping up that whole process until August of 2020. So between recording, mixing, and mastering, it took me 8.5 months to do just that. Now, of course, one of the reasons why that took so long is because I did this entire process completely by myself. There was no outside help doing this with me. I could have maybe knocked this whole thing out in maybe half the time if I solely was able to focus just on the album, but of course between being a father and a responsible adult outside of this music thing, you know, you don't really get a whole lot of time to just devote on a single thing. So that was basically the whole process of recording and whatnot, and now I want to kind of get into the people who influenced me to basically make this thing. So I'm just going to go ahead and read them off, and I'm going to show you a picture on the screen of who these people are, and this list is in no particular order, of course. But we got Rush, Prince, Slash, Steve Vai, Frank Zappa, Eddie Van Halen, Jimi Hendrix, Michelangelo Badio, Yngwie Malmsteen, Kiss, Motley Crue, Escape the Fate, Zakk Wylde, Bullet for My Valentine, Avenged Sevenfold, Ben E. King, Metallica, Led Zeppelin, the Trans-Siberian Orchestra, AC/DC, Stevie Nicks, and Pantera. So we had 21 different people who went into helping make this what this became. And that's almost double the amount of songs that there were, so that's how you know it's like not any one person influenced any one song. It was just a combination of a lot of different things to create this whole project. And that's ideally what you want as an artist. And trucking right along, I want to kind of get into the definition of the word Eons, if you didn't know. On the inside of the album, when you get it, it's got a lovely picture of me there. And it says Donnie Unitus, and that's me. But Eons, the definition is an indefinite and very long period of time, often exaggerated for humorous or rhetorical effect. I called this Eons because it truly felt like eons had passed by while I was working on this thing. Like I said, the whole conception started back in June of 2018, and it wouldn't wrap up until August 2020. So when you work on something for that long, it just seemed like forever. So what Eons is an instrumental rock guitar album. So there's no vocals on this, everything is strictly instrumental music. But albeit instrumental, it does follow its own story. Essentially, and I'm going to go into this a little bit deeper with each song, because each song basically tells its own story, or its own part of the story, if you will. But the whole process is about an eternal being that's having some sort of existential crisis, and basically it's trying to figure out what its purpose for being is. So along the way, it discovers human life, and it figures that it needs to interfere with human life because it doesn't like what it sees, and through its interference with humans, it starts to discover its purpose for being. And basically it's also meant to sum up kind of how human life is the way it is today as a result of the time traveler helping humans out many years ago. So what I'm going to do for you guys now is I'm going to play you about 30 seconds of each of the songs in order as they appear on the album, and then I'm going to kind of do a little bit more of a deeper dive on each of the songs individually. Track number 1, Time Traveler. Again, the one that started it all for me. This again was written back in May of 2018. The playtime on this one is 3 minutes and 58 seconds. This consists of 14 separate tracks. So remember again how I was talking about tracking a record. Each individual instrument is its own track. So this consists of 14 individual tracks. It has 1 drum track and 1 bass track, 4 lead guitar tracks, 3 rhythm guitar tracks, 2 synth tracks, synth keyboards, and 3 clean guitar tracks. Now the reason why I'm breaking it down like that is because when you hear this, I want you to kind of try to listen for all those little instruments, if you can try to hear all of them, and you can hear all the different layers. And all those layers are basically what's called production. Now this is how the song Time Traveler relates to the story. A tale of a being known only as the Time Traveler. This being always has been and always will be, but it questions its reasoning for existing, which sets in motion a pilgrimage of cosmic proportions. This is the intro to the whole album. So track number 2 is Domination. This song was written back in February of 2018, and it's one of the 3 songs that was pulled from the previous project that I was working on before I even had the concept for this record in my head. This song's playtime is 5 minutes and 12 seconds, so on the longer side. This one only consists of 9 separate tracks, 1 drum track, 1 bass track, 5 lead guitar tracks, and 2 rhythm tracks. This is also the second heaviest song on the record, which is why I put this song second, because if you can basically stomach this song as far as the heaviness goes, you can basically take whatever the rest of the album is going to throw at you. Now for the story of Domination. The time traveler first finds itself at the end of a human story. There is nothing left in this world except chaos and destruction. The being is extremely empathetic towards all kinds of life and has come to wonder what this world was like before the end. So in the story arc, this is technically where the journey begins, albeit the Time Traveler itself, the song, starts off the record. Domination sets off the actual placement of the story. track number 3, Garden of Eden. This song was written in June of 2018. The playtime on this one is 4 minutes and 8 seconds. This one consists of 11 individual tracks, 1 drum track, 1 bass track, 3 lead guitar tracks, 3 harmony lead guitar tracks, and 3 clean guitar tracks. This is, of course, the softest song on the record. This has kind of got a smooth jazz kind of feel, the total polar opposite of Domination. Basically, I wanted to kind of give the listener a break from the heavy stuff. I don't want to overwhelm them too much. So when you're making an album, pacing, just like making a movie, pacing is very important for the listener when you're making them sit through an hour's worth of music. And now for the story. The time traveler goes all the way back to the place where life first was nurtured, the Garden of Eden. It revels in the beauty and power this magnificent place holds. After a period of respite, it's time to return back to Earth, but this time it's just as human life is developing there. So the time traveler has seen Domination and has not liked what he has seen in there, and has wondered if there's a way to basically fix what led to that. So he goes all the way to the beginning of life, which in the story, as we know it, if you follow any sort of religious ideals, the Garden of Eden is where all of life was first nurtured. So that's where the time traveler finds himself, and it's supposed to be this magnificent place. So this the tone of this song, I want it to be very soft and comforting, if you will. So track number 4, Stoned Age. This song was written back in August of 2018. This song's playtime is exactly 4 minutes long. This only consists of 7 individual tracks, 1 drum track, 1 bass track, 3 lead guitar tracks, and 2 rhythm tracks. I kind of wanted to keep this one pretty simple because this is very much a classic rock song in the vein of psychedelic rock, if you will, as well. So I wanted to try to harken back to recording back in the early days, which you didn't have a bunch of tracks to record on simultaneously, so I tried to make this one a minimalistic kind of song. As for the story of Stoned Age, the time traveler sees how basic human life is and fears that the instinctual nature of humans as animals leads to the domination of mankind. So it feels that it must intervene to grant higher intelligence to these life forms. The humans appear to be receptive to this help, as it's very clear that they're definitely learning what is being taught to them. So one of the things that's happening in this song in particular is as you listen, the first solo that you hear is definitely in the vein of a traditional classic rock kind of song, something maybe that you'd hear in like a Led Zeppelin kind of song. The second solo that comes in, and for the first solo, it's also panned on the far left side, I believe. And for the second solo that you hear, it's panned on the far right side, and it's supposed to emulate more of a modern type of guitar playing, so it's very technical. And as the song progresses, you're going to start to hear that the left side of the track is progressively doing more of what the right side of the guitar was introducing, and this is meant to simulate the time traveler communicating with the human beings. So that was a cool little touch that I hope translates through when you actually hear it for yourself. So track number 5, Roses. This song was written back in January of 2018. The playtime on this one is 4 minutes and 40 seconds long. It consists of 10 separate tracks, 2 synth keyboard tracks, 1 drum track, 1 bass track, 4 lead guitar tracks, and 2 rhythm guitar tracks. This is also a song I was considering as making a single, and I might make a music video for this one. I'm still planning all that stuff out. This is also a song that was quoted again from the original 3 songs that were written before the album's conception. and this one just seemed to fit perfectly, as it just has so many catchy elements, much more so than any other song that I had written for this purpose. Now for the story portion of Roses. One basic but extremely powerful emotion that the humans experience even before the time traveler's help is love. As the being watches over mankind, it notices that roses hold a huge significance to the humans. They are given for holidays, as congratulatory gifts, or whenever someone passes away. This seems trivial to the being, however, it simply just continues to observe. And on to track number 6. This is Beyond Infinity. This track was written back in February of 2019. The playtime on this one is 4 minutes and 12 seconds. It consists of 8 separate tracks, again going to more of a basic formula. 1 drum track, 1 bass track, 4 lead guitar tracks, and 2 rhythm guitar tracks. This song was more or less just written as one of 2 songs on the record, more like jammy songs, which is kind of interesting to say because these are all instrumentals. But whereas most of the songs hold a significant portion to the storyline. This song and one other song, Space Jam, are meant to be more of an ambient tune to something that's happening within the story. Its significance to the story, again, once the time traveler comes to understand the complex emotions that the humans share, it can't help but wonder what the antithesis of love is. The being decides to travel to the farthest reaches of its existence itself, which even for the time traveler takes an extremely long time. Still filled with all the emotions that arose back on Earth while exploring love, the being pushes forward beyond infinity. Track number 7, Dusk Till Dawn. The song was written back in January of 2018. The playtime on this one is 4 minutes and 20 seconds. It consists of 8 separate tracks, just the same as the one that came before it. 1 drum track, 1 bass track, 3 lead guitar tracks, and 3 acoustic guitar tracks. This is the only song that doesn't feature electric rhythm guitars. The rhythm guitars are all acoustic in this song. This is probably one of the more interesting pieces on the record in that it seems pretty experimental the way it progresses along. I had a lot of fun doing this one, and I wanted to just have something that was kind of like Spanish or Latin inspired featured in the mix of the songs that I had. And for reference to the story, the time traveler finally transitions to a parallel universe after what seems like ages. In this place, evil has full reign over all. The being eventually stumbles on a place that seems very similar to Earth. It finds that here there most definitely is no love. There are no feelings of joy. The dead walk the earth here and claims the lives of anyone that they can. From dusk till dawn, the struggle ensues over and over again. Track number 8, Requiem. This song was written back in September of 2019. The playtime on this one is 4 minutes and 40 seconds long. It consists of 7 individual tracks, 1 drum track, 1 bass track, 3 lead guitar tracks, and 2 rhythm guitar tracks. As I mentioned before, this is my second favorite song on the album, if not my first. Between Roses and Requiem, I'm not sure which of them I like better, but for the reasons I like this one so much is when it comes to writing metal music and playing metal music, it just incorporates all of my favorite things that a metal song does. In the story, the sense of impending doom is overwhelming here. The only thing that is constant is death. For all mortals, death is an inevitability, but here, in this place, it seems more like a punishment. It appears that all who are alive in this world somehow belong here and are set to endure eternal anguish. And making our way to song number 9, this is Hyperdrive. This song was written in January of 2018. The playtime on this one is 6 minutes and 18 seconds, making it the longest song on the record. It consists of 8 individual tracks, 1 drum track, 1 bass track, 4 lead guitar tracks, and 2 rhythm guitar tracks. This is also the last of the bunch of the songs that were pulled from the project that was written before the album was conceived. And to me, this song in particular always evoked some sort of feeling of either driving really fast or like flying a fighter jet or something crazy like that. So that's how the song ended up becoming called Hyperdrive. And the reference to the story for Hyperdrive: believing that it had found what it was looking for, the time traveler makes haste to leave this horrible place. There's a strong urgency to get out of there as the being fears becoming corrupted from all the negative energy that surrounds the world. It kicks into hyperdrive and makes a beeline straight back home. And song number 10, Space Jam. This track was written back in November of 2018. The playtime on this one is 3 minutes and 51 seconds. It consists of 13 separate tracks, 1 drum track, 1 bass track, 2 lead guitar tracks, with 2 harmonic overdubbing tracks, just backing it up for more fuller sound, and 4 extra lead production tracks in there just to make just like crazy things happen in the production, and then 3 rhythm guitar tracks. This song was always meant to be a tribute to the late great Eddie Van Halen, but of course the song was written back in November of 2019, and he would go to pass in, I believe, April of 2020. So I didn't write it after his death. It was just always meant to be a tribute to Eddie Van Halen. Basically, this song is also, like I was mentioning before, the second of the more jammy tracks in it. It's meant to be a soundtrack or a placement in the story that the song itself is not integral to the story, more or less is just an ambient portion of what's happening. And as Space Jam pertains to the story, speeding through the universe, the being begins to think back on everything that it experienced so far. The knowledge gained has created a sense of purpose for the time traveler, and it has become overcome with joy. The time traveler is moving so fast through the stars that each galaxy makes a small tune as they pass by. And the one that's going to end it for us, Revelations. This track was written in January of 2018. The playtime on this one is 5 minutes and 8 seconds. It consists of 11 separate tracks, 3 synth keyboard tracks, 1 drum track, 1 bass track, 2 lead guitar tracks, and 2 ending leads with 2 rhythm guitar tracks. This song was the original ending to the record before I had Space Jam. And I don't know, I just felt like I needed something to come before this for the continuity and the pacing of the whole album. So this song was written with an ending, it being an ending piece in mind. But again, Space Jam was the one that actually was the final song written for the whole album. And now the conclusion of our story. Once the time traveler returns home, it begins to simply ponder. Life, communication, love, and death. So much that was previously unknown is now very clear. The time traveler finally feels that it understands its place in the universe. If it ever feels like it needs to be reminded of any of the experiences that were had, the time traveler can take this journey anytime over and over again, but for now, its revelations make it content. The being dematerializes and explodes, causing pure light to scatter across the universe. In its place, only its heart remains and shines as the brightest star in the sky. And with that, that's going to go ahead and conclude our story of Eons. So moving on to the closing portions of this video, I want to first thank you guys for tuning in. I know this video is pretty long, and I hope I made it interesting enough for you the whole way through. I want to say that when you work on something like this for so long, and it takes so much of your time, to see everything through all of the challenges, which there were many challenges, some personal, some technical, but again, just to see it all come to fruition, and to have something to physically hold, and it means something, and it's hard to describe what that is, but it means something. And I want to take this time to thank all my heroes, because without those people I would not be the person that I am today. And I also want to dedicate this album to my children, to show that if you have a dream and determination and you're willing to start somewhere, you can see it all the way through, and you can experience so much in this life. I also want to dedicate this album lastly to rock and roll as a whole, because rock and roll has saved my life many times over, and I just want to do my part to preserve it. And with that being said, I thank you guys very much for tuning in. I do want to let you guys know how you can obtain this record for yourself really quickly. There's two ways to go about it. If you come see any of my pop-ups or any of my shows, it's $5 in person. If you need me to mail it to you, it'll be $10, but your postage is included in that $10. You can also obtain it for $5 via email, in which I'll send you all the songs digitally, and that's only $5 paid via Cash App. I'm going to have the Cash App information in the description of this video, and what you do is you Cash App me the $5, and then you put your email in the message, and then that's where I'm going to send you the information. I think that's everything. I really appreciate you guys all tuning in. It really makes a difference. I'll tell you, it really helps make all this stuff worthwhile. Even though I'd be doing it anyway, it just makes it that much easier to go through the motions to do all this stuff, because it is hard work. But yeah, man, I appreciate all you guys. I love you. God bless.